Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Barry Hammarback of River Falls is a Democratic candidate in the 30th Assembly District. Barry, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Good morning.
You, on your campaign website, you seem to indicate that the package of Foxconn tax breaks and incentives is a big reason why you're running. Can you explain why?
Yes, it actually got me motivated. I've never run for anything before, but I thought it was such a spectacularly poor business decision that somebody needed to say something about it. And I know Mr. Zimmerman, my opponent here, was very much in favor of it. And I just didn't understand the reasoning. I just thought it was wrong-headed.
You say in your campaign website that, let me get the right number, $40 million from Pierce and St. Croix County will go for the Foxconn deal. What's the source of that number?
We calculated that out, taking the amount that we pay in taxes from Pierce and St. Croix County, calculated it out and kind of did a pro rata calculation of what additional funds it would take out of Pierce and St. Croix County to offset all of the tax benefits, assuming they're spread across the state. And so whether it's actual cash out the door or available money to do funding for projects, it all comes out that way. In fact, if you look at it at the most expensive end, it's about $60 million between the two. And of course, we desperately need those funds for roads, for health care in western Wisconsin. We have a huge problem with meth yet that has not been properly dealt with. And then we've got all these limits on levies right now, where we can't even raise the money if we agree to do it. And so these things need to be changed if we're going to have a western Wisconsin that I've known to love and live in.
You would have voted against the Foxconn deal. What about the plan floated in August to give Foxconn-like tax breaks to Kimberly-Clark, a homegrown Wisconsin company? Would you have also voted against that?
I'd have to see exactly what they were doing, because I am not totally against that. My other real objection to that is those of us that have run businesses in Wisconsin that are good businesses, have done it without these tax breaks, and so now they're talking about spreading them out, and I'm not so totally opposed to that. It would depend on situation to situation, but we have to keep in mind that we want to have companies that are good neighbors coming into Wisconsin. We want them to pay their fair share. We want them to come to Wisconsin not because it's the bargain basement place to raise a plant for workers, but because it's a great environment to live in, because we've got high standards of education, because we've got a marvelous environment, because we take care of our environment and we're worried about our folks, and we want to have a higher standard of living. We want companies that are part of that come in not just to use us as a cheap source of labor and real estate, but rather to be a good neighbor and work with us on these projects, and that takes money. They need to pay their fair share.
Well, let's come back to levy limits that are local governments have to live with. Would you do away with them, ease them, or it doesn't sound like you keep them? So you would do what with them?
I would do away with levy limits. I think we need to let local government do its thing. It is tasked with the job of taking care of its folks in those specific neighborhoods, and it needs to do it. I mean, levy limits are causing all sorts of problems in Pierce County. We get to raise the levy limit there. I think it's like was it $250,000, and that's consumed in one cost increase in there. So it really is hamstringing everybody. And the idea that you can actually now put limits on the amount of referenda you could have for schools, I think, is wrong. I mean, if we're in a neighborhood that we're at, we should be able to spend whatever we need to spend to have the quality of life that we all agree with, and the state should stay out of that.
Let's come back to highway funding. There's an impasse in the Capitol. How would you pay for our highway, bridge, and maintenance future?
by acknowledging the fact that roads cost money. Roads and bridges and highways cost money. They cost a certain amount of money. That money needs to be paid. And so one of the things, of course, would be to simply bring back, and it's a start, simply bring back the road tax to where it would be, but for the stop. You know, it was indexed to inflation back when, and it got stopped at about 40 cents. It'd be about 47 cents a gallon right now if they brought it. That would be a start. But then you need to look at the structure. The other thing is what's happened is by borrowing money to pay for these road taxes, we've increased the amount that's spent on interest alone, and it doesn't get spent on roads. So we need to actually ramp up, figure out how to get the money, whether it's by taxes or charges or anything else, to pay for the roads. And we should stop borrowing to do it.
Would you raise the gas tax?
Yes.
Discussion of tolling in the Capitol. Do you have a position?
I'm totally against tolling.
Okay. Let's talk about health care. How should we protect and expand health care in rural areas of Wisconsin?
We should make Badger Care available to everybody, in my view. We've waited for the federal government to come in and do something. We ended up with Obamacare, which really wasn't an answer in my view. I look out, my wife is on the exchange. We have one choice, or had one choice in Pierce County for her. That's not healthcare choice, and it was really expensive and it had really high deductibles. I think we've made progress by not having pre-existing conditions in there, so it's available to more people. But we need to simply look at having a single health care program that's available to everybody in the state of Wisconsin, and that's Badger Care. We also need to take these Medicare, or Medicaid rather, supplements from the federal government, because that's really harming the local budgets for emergency services right now, not having that.
So does state government have a role in retaining and recruiting doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals?
I think it should. I think some local communities really need that, especially if you get into the rural areas. There simply isn't funding, and of course we're going to more of a corporate model where we have bigger and bigger buildings and we try to centralize everything. And that, in my view, is not the right way to approach healthcare. We have to accept that localized healthcare is going to cost a little bit more money. We can't make it as efficient as possible. The other thing is, I think we have to take a look at controlling profits on the nonprofit healthcare facilities. It's out of hand and it's getting worse. And so I think good government needs to level the playing field on healthcare, and we need to have some enforcement of the insurance rules that we already have.
State government and Delta Dental subsidize dental clinics in some areas of Wisconsin. Should that be a priority in our next Medicaid budget?
I think dental care is a very important aspect of health care in general, and I think it should be a part of the budget. I think we should expand and make dental care available. There's lots of evidence. I've actually worked in the dental field. I was the chairman of the International Organization for Safety and Asepsis Procedures in Dentistry 5-6 years ago, maybe 10. And it's very important. Oral health is much more important to people's general well-being than most people think. And so I think expanded dental care for Wisconsin would be an excellent way to do it.
Wisconsin just passed up to $100 million in school safety grants. Is that enough, or do we need to change gun laws?
We need to address some deep-seated problems that nobody seems to want to try to get their handle on. And the problems I'm talking about are, why do we have so many people incarcerated in the state of Wisconsin? Why do they tend to stay there? Why is the recidivism so high? Why is our suicide rate so high? Why is our opioid addiction rates so high? I mean, there's some problems that are deep-seated, I think, in Wisconsin, and probably in the rest of the country too, but certainly in Wisconsin, having to do with incarceration, and I think it might come back to health care or mental health care. And we need to really take a good hard look at that and get into it. And that's one of the reasons that the Foxconn deal stood out to me, because what if we'd had taken $4.5 billion of taxes one way or another and put it into the University of Wisconsin? If we're looking down the road 100 years, aren't we in a better position to try to solve more of those problems? I mean, we could put the money in infrastructure to start with. We could hire people, pay people better. We would raise the level of wages, which is what we need to do. We need no more jobs, really. We need higher wages for the jobs we're actually getting. And then that money could be put back into healthcare in the local community. So that's what I'm thinking is we need to come back to that. There's something wrong, and whether it's a combination of gun control or the way we look at crime or mental health, we need to do something. I don't think it's as simple as just doing one thing.
Part of the debate over mental health funding gets you to the issue of the corrections budget. And do we need a new state prison? 2 of our adult male prisons are built in the 1800s. Do we need a new state prison is going to be one of the questions in the next state budget.
If we're going to continue to putting people in prison instead of figuring out how to keep them out of prison, yes. I mean, the facilities that we have are old, but I mean, our prison budget is over $1 billion now, and it's going to be climbing. And so how many people are we going to lock up? Isn't it better to try to prevent them from going to prison in the first place? And then, how do we get them out and keep them out? What's the path to redemption of people that have paid their dues in society and getting out? We're not addressing those issues, and we need to.
The current state budget does increase state funding for our K-12 public schools. How well funded are those public schools? Do we need another similar major increase in the next state budget?
Yes. I think we need to put more money into education. The studies I've seen saying that money spent on education really comes back to us many-fold, and I think it's just a good economic place to be. We want Wisconsin to be smarter. I think in reading comprehension now we're number 36, which is one state behind Mississippi. As a Wisconsin resident for all these years, I just don't find that acceptable.
The Choice, the voucher program, has expanded. Started out in Milwaukee, Racine, and now statewide. Should it expand further? Your position on Choice?
I don't think it should expand further. I'm concerned that if we have too much private sector into public education, all we're doing is increasing costs. So you have to have like facilities, or you have to have sharing arrangements. You have to have just as many teachers. You have to have everything else. So you really are in effect supporting 2 systems if you do that. I don't see any way that it makes education either better or cheaper. And so I'm just not in favor of that.
If you had to change our tax structure to come up with more money for schools, have you thought about what changes you would make in Wisconsin's tax structure?
We need to clean it up somewhat. I mean, we have certainly in most taxes as it relates to business, there's kind of a separate business deal made for these big companies that come in. I mean, we're talking about Kimberly-Clark, we're talking about the Foxconn deal. I think it should be level across the board. Let's get a policy that makes it level across the board and say, don't be afraid of saying this is how much it's going to cost, whether it's income tax that we have to take and adjust so that everybody pays a fair share. I think that's what we need to do. We can't just be saying, oh, we can cut taxes, we can cut taxes. Well, things cost money. We have to identify the fact that the things we want are going to cost some money, and we have to pay for them. And I think most people's concern is we don't mind paying the taxes, but we want to see that they're properly used and they're not wasted. And so proper use of that, I think, is really what comes into play. So if we have to raise the income tax, I would much rather do that than borrow more money.
UW system budget. Should we continue the freeze on resident undergrad tuition?
No. Tuition really funds most of the university right now, and we have to unfreeze that, I think, and allow it to be what it is to be, because it's affecting the programs that we have. But we have to put more state money into the University of Wisconsin education system. From where it was as a bright shining star over the last years, it's declined and declined. The money they put in last year, it is a start, but it doesn't begin to take, to recover, I think, what damage had been done previously. So we just have to take a look at that and say, are we going to invest in something that we're going to need in the next 100 years? And in my book, the answer is yes.
Time to legalize medical or recreational marijuana?
It's time to legalize it and move forward.
Okay, and any money gained from the taxation of recreational marijuana should go where?
I think it should be used, I'd like to see it used in mental health support and some of the programs that we have to support, I guess, healthcare in general and mental health. I'd like to see it limited. To that, I think it should help if there are problems there that are created, whether it's drugs or alcohol or any of these things that we have. I think the funding for that should go, at least in major part, to solving problems that it might create.
Differences between you and the Republican incumbent you're challenging on November 6th?
I think the biggest difference is better judgment that's just focused on having businesses being good neighbors, on looking back at what's done. I mean, he's a nice fellow. He is, and he certainly means well, but this Foxconn deal, I think, demonstrates how far he is from the things that really make a difference here in western Wisconsin. We're kind of left out in western Wisconsin most of the time anyway, and we need a strong advocate that'll fight for those things that we need to get here, and I think I can do a better job than he does.
Thank you. Barry Hammarback of River Falls is a Democratic candidate in the 30th Assembly District. Barry, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
Thank you.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.